And happy Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Well, for some of us, it's still morning. I have to say that. But Thanksgiving, 2 days away. So definitely want to tell everybody happy Thanksgiving and please stay safe this weekend. Don't go out and start any fights over the Black Friday sales. Although, like I said, if you video them, we will post them. No worries on that. But we are here today for the conversation with Anna J Stewart, who is a USA Today best-selling author. Make sure I got all this in my head correctly. But want to thank you coming on the show. And can you tell us a little bit about the genre you write in and the books that you have?
Thanks, Greg. It's so great to be with you today and with all of your viewers. Yes, my name is Anna J Stewart. That is what I write under, the name I write under. I write in the romance genre. I write everything from sweet, contemporary small town romance. I do paranormal romance. And most recently, I've branched out into more dark romantic suspense, but I also write some lighter romantic suspense. So if it's in the romance genre, chances are I've probably written it.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about your books that you have out and where people can find them?
Sure. So the best place to find all of my books are through my website. That's authorannastewart.com. There's a universal theme in all of my books, I think. And that tends to be family found, family made. I always have a large cast of characters in my book, and it's usually a family that my characters have built for themselves. Sometimes it's the family they're born to. Other times it's the one they've just built along the way, as most of us do. So that's probably the unifying theme of all of my books. Like I said, I do write small town kind of Hallmark style romances with a little bit more emotional conflict than what you see on the screens. And then I write romantic suspense that has a little bit more action adventure. I call them roller coaster books where things are going like this. And then my new book, Exposed, which just came out on November 15th, is the first of my Circle of the Red Lily series, which is a romantic suspense series set in Hollywood. My heroine is a paparazzo on the side. She's also a photographer, artist type who earns her main money through being a paparazzi in Hollywood. But it also brings a lot of old Hollywood into it. I'm a big Hollywood fan going way back. So there's golden age of Hollywood references pulling through a mystery that my heroine exposes with a canister of film that she develops. And it calls into question a notorious murder conviction that took place in Hollywood about 20 years before. And it kind of opens up a whole can of worms and exposes a secret society that lurks within Hollywood and some other powerful organizations. So it was a lot of fun. I loved writing it. But as far as what I write, if you love romance and stories about relationships and connections and emotional connections, whether it be excitement or small town or other worlds like in my paranormal, check out my books. I bet you'll like them.
Paranormal, though, there's a new type of romance that I've
Yeah.
actually just been seeing coming up within the last probably 5 years. And of course, that's just me that I've seen coming it up. So it's probably been out there a little bit longer.
It has
But,
been. It's been there quite a while. Yeah.
but can you tell us a little bit about the paranormal romance? And
Sure. So paranormal romance kind of I always call it magical worlds outside your own door. Um uh there's paranormal romance, there's urban fantasy romance, which urban fantasy usually lends itself to a more secretive world. Whereas paranormal is kind of like you step into uh I always kind of liken it to the Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy's living her ordinary life and then she steps into Oz and it's suddenly all technicolor. That's kind of how I have always thought of as paranormal romance. But it's a lot of world building and it's a lot of fantasy, and it's more fantasy than it is like, say, science fiction romance, which is a thing. Also, science fiction romance is actually a really big thing. But that lends itself more toward the technology aspect, where paranormal romance, at least in my view, has always lent itself more to the fantasy aspect. So
now, we did talk a little bit before the show. Now, when people think romance, they tend to think spicy.
yeah.
So And we discussed before, that's more of the erotica type books that are now out. Can you tell us the difference, the big
Sure.
differences?
So there is erotic romance, which tends to make the sexual relationship between the characters the main focus of the book. Typically, regular or contemporary romance or the rest of the romance genre is where the emotional relationship between the two people is really the main focus of the book. So you have the emotional versus the physical. There's nothing wrong with either one. They're both best-selling genres. I think erotica has definitely seen an uptick with the invention of the Kindle, because you no longer have to worry about hiding the cover of whatever you're reading. That said, there are some awesome erotica covers. I do not write erotica. I don't write romance to write the sex, but there are some amazing erotica writers out there who do a phenomenal job with that. I personally like the romance genre that is less spicy, although I will say Exposed is probably the hottest book I've written with sexual content, only because of the language I was allowed to use in this versus when I'm writing for a different publisher who has a certain limit on vocabulary, which totally makes sense. I understand it. You have to live up to readers' expectations and what they're expecting when they open a book. So language choice has a lot to do with that. But so that, yes, romance books are not all about sex. Yes, they have sex in them. Some of them, not all of them. I write quite a few books that do not. But then the erotica tends to have the higher sexual content.
So I would definitely say you have a lot more of the dramatization in the romance books than you would the
Yes.
erotica books.
As far as I know, I'm also not a big
Well,
reader of erotica, but yes,
yeah.
the idea behind a romance is the developing relationship between the two main characters or the three main characters. I mean, we've got thruples
Mhm.
going on and everything. So it's that emotional connection that people are looking for within a romance novel, which is one reason why it's always kind of ticked me off the way that romance always gets bashed and teased about, and
Mhm.
especially on social media. But romance is pretty much what we're all in this life for, right? Aren't we all looking for that other person to complete us, or although I hate that phrase, but the other person that we want to spend the rest of our lives with? That's what romance is. So bashing a genre that essentially explores the human condition that we are all striving for in this life really has never made any sense to me. But that's what romance is. And it's also a hopeful genre, because of the romance novel, you always know you're going to get a happily ever after at the end. You don't know how you're going to get there, but it's a guaranteed happily ever after. As far as I'm concerned, if it doesn't have that happily ever after, it is not a romance.
Now, when you said complete me, the first thing that came to my mind was Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It just irritates me to no end. Nobody should have to complete you. You complete
No,
yourself.
no, it should be teamwork. Relationships are teamwork, and
Exactly.
like you said earlier, family. It's family oriented.
Yes.
Now, what was your biggest inspiration for writing all these? What's been your biggest inspiration to continue writing?
Well, I think when I first started, it was because I read a romance. It was back in the mid 80s, giving away my age. When I hit high school, somebody gave me a romance novel to read, and I was always a reader. I mean, I was a voracious reader. I think I came out of the womb with a book. At least that's what my mother always tells me. And it was the one thing she never said no to. But I was also born in the 70s, and in the 70s they didn't have the young adult section and the books
Mm-mm.
that they do now for young people. I started reading Stephen King when I was 8. Carrie was the first adult book I ever read, and I read that book into the ground. I read it so many times. It's still one of my favorite books. Um, and I think that combined with the first movie I remember seeing in the theaters, which was Star Wars, my spark of imagination and my love of storytelling, I think really that's where it came from. And then when I discovered romance novels in high school, I was like, I have to learn how to do this. This is it. This is what I want to do. I didn't realize at the time that I could actually make a career doing it. I thought I would have to, get a real job, and which explains why I kept changing my majors in college. Um, and then finally realizing that if I were a full-time writer, I could be everything I wanted to be within the space of time that it took me to write that book. So I would say my main influences were probably Star Wars, Stephen King, Nora Roberts, and just storytelling in general.
That's interesting that you said that, because they didn't have young adult back then.
Mm-mm.
And I remember the first book that I actually picked up and read and got at a bookstore was Clan of the Cave Bear.
Oh, okay.
And that was late 70s, early 80s. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was anywhere between 8 to 10 years old. Of course, now
Yeah,
I'm really giving my age, but
I know we must be about the same age. Yeah, because I mean, I was 7 when Star Wars came out, and coupling that with Stephen King and Carrie in particular, I didn't see the movie until I was much older. I'm not a. It's interesting. I love horror books. I don't care for horror films, and I think it's because I like the process of it moving through my mind on my own rather than seeing it visually. But yeah, so those are my main influences and still are.
the imagination's one of the biggest things for books. It's
Yeah,
like doing your own movie through reading.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's actually I think I've had a couple of reviewers point that out that it feels as if I'm watching a movie. And it's probably because of the way my brain works, right? I've been such a movie and TV junkie all of my life that my natural storytelling tends to be like I'm watching a movie. And I kind of in my head kind of almost map it out like a comic book where it's seen, shot, 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 and I take that and that's what becomes the words and that's what turns into the book. So I think that's probably how my brain translate that love of movies into how I write.
Well, definitely want to ask, where can people find you and your books at? What's website?
Well, like I said, my website is www.authorannastewart.com. I am traditionally published. I'm not self-published. Kudos to all those authors who do that and do it well, because it's way too much for me. I just want to write the book and move on to the next project. So all of my books are available wide on Amazon, but all of the buy links for all the e-tailers and retailers where you can find them are all on my website. All of my books have all of the links. And for Exposed, if people were interested in getting an advance or an autographed copy of that, I can probably make that happen through a local bookstore called Face in a Book. It's here in El Dorado Hills. And I'll be having a book signing there next weekend. And I'm more than happy to sign copies if they want to call that particular store and order one. And then they'll ship it out as soon as I sign it. And all of that information is on my website. If you go to my website and then up to appearances, I've got all the information for that book signing right there.
Just make sure I got that right. AuthorAnnaStewart.com.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
That's it.
Definitely. But again, want to tell everybody happy Thanksgiving. I will be here again tomorrow at 1 p.m. for another conversation. Sorry, because I know I'm doing a couple of shows for Amy tomorrow on Author Talk. So again, tomorrow, 1 p.m. for the conversation. We have, my mind's going blank right now.
'Tis the season. It's okay.
It's been a long couple of weeks for me, and I think people understand why, what I've been through for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But want to thank you for coming on our show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
And want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. And again, everybody stay safe. And we will see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. And then I'll have the other shows for you coming up afterwards.